So this video will be about a bullet feeder that I made for a Dillon XL650. It's 3D printed. I printed it and I got the design, the basic design. I've made some mods, but I got the basic design on thingiverse.com. That's thingiverse.com, Thingiverse. And they've got some pretty neat stuff for a hobbyist who wants to make his own things or save some money. This bullet feeder is for 9mm. I think it'll drop 30 caliber or 32 okay. 223, you'd probably have to go to a different spring size, such as like a spring like this. This is just pipe bending spring that you'd get a kit of 4 for under $10. And so this is the smallest size. This one would probably only be good for 223 and maybe 17 caliber, who knows. Maybe 25 caliber too. The bullet drop up there, the tube would work with, say, 9mm. It won't work with 40 cal, 357, probably 30 cal's okay. Let's see if I can zoom in on a little bit while staying back here. So it's nice and flexible. It works pretty great. This is one application where you're better off if you're Dillon press. If you're using a Dillon press, you're better off if the press isn't sitting on one of those strong mounts, because now I have to use a stool to get to the to see what's going on in the hopper if it jams or what have you. So I have to have a stool next to it. So let's go from so at the bottom I'm running a Mr. Bullet Feeder bullet drop. Just that's the actual bullet drop die, that black thing with the tube on it. And the black thing, the Mr. Bullet Feeder, I mean, it's really easy to set up. On this thing, all I had is you put some bullets in it, you raise a 9mm case to it, and then you start screwing it down until it drops a bullet and tighten the ring, and you're done pretty much. The station next to it is powder on the right, and for Dillons they sell, and I think the lock and load presses now, I think it's called a Bullet Factory. They have a stepped die that's used for flaring, just like for the Mr. Bullet Feeder for the XL650, a step die that flares the mouth so that when the bullet is dropped into the case, it kind of likes to, where's the camera at? Too close. I'm zoomed in, no wonder. So when the bullet's dropped in, it kind of actually holds it. Apparently if it's set right, the bullet shouldn't fall out of it. So it just drops it in lightly and bullet should stay there, so it's less likely to tip and fall off. So anyway, Mr. Bullet Feeder die, you can get those for around 50 bucks, 50 to 55 on the internet, although they sell fast when they come up, so you just keep an eye out for them. But it's really super easy to set up. That's my own bullet drop design above it, the switch mechanism. Because Mr. Bullet Feeder has a switch mechanism down by the die, I figured that the plans for this thing have it up there, the switch mechanism at the very top, and that near that's my own design too, which eventually I'll put this stuff on Thingiverse. But since Mr. Bullet Feeder, which is a very successful product, has the switch down low, I decided to do it down there as well, and roll my own that could use the plumbing pipe or the plumbing bender springs, since they're so available and easy to find. And I'll show you what the adapter looks like. Just this little guy here. It's using relays that are commonly available on Amazon right now from China. This one worked really well. These relays are, you want to get a 10-pack of them because some are more sensitive than others. The consistency isn't real great between them. And there's a way you can modify the inside for a little spring so it's a lighter drop. Like, I'm not sure, this one works fine for 9mm, but I don't know that a 55 grain 223 round would trip that switch. I'm going to try to do something a little different with maybe a light switch, something along this line, but where light break, but who knows. Just have to try to play. It's experimental. So with this little guy, so it's got a step here at the bottom of it that pushes down tightly on the bullet feeder die, and then you screw in the spring. That in this case I think it's called, I don't know what they call that size actually, probably 3/8 or 1/2 inch. Don't know if they measure the inside or the outside diameter, but you would screw it in or remove it, pushing it in counterclockwise, and for both directions, for both for in or outs, counterclockwise, because it compresses the spring, makes it fit the hole, and this works really well. This one was printed at 25% infill, but everything that I'm going to run permanently, I'm going to be using 100% infill, with the exception of this was the very first bullet drop that I made, and I did at 60%, and it's a little bit wimpy. I mean, probably a 10-year-old kid could rip this thing apart if they felt like it down up here, but you know, I mean, for like 223, which is going to be a dedicated 223 hopper, that's, I'll probably go ahead and try it, because it's not really a big deal to print. You know, this isn't that complicated. All you got to do is take the design and stick it on your printer and run it. So it's not the end of the world. You just lose like probably 16 hours of print time. I printed on that 0.3 millimeter resolution, and that worked pretty well. The motor is just a geared motor. The motor up there is a 30 RPM motor. This is another 30 RPM, although this is something that I had. And so that has a little teeny weeny motor. The motor up there is about that much longer. So it's no doubt much more powerful, and this probably isn't suitable for use. And I'm not even sure about this style of a transmission either. We'll have to try and see. The Mr. Bullet Feeder, they have like a motor that would be like that much longer, up to where my thumb is. So the motor is about 3 times larger than what's on this, but it's about the same as what's on the press. And but the gear mechanism on it is a worm drive gear mechanism, so I don't know if that'll be a lot more reliable or not. But anyway, this motor is plenty powerful. You rarely run it. You do not need 30 RPM. In fact, I have another one on order, and that is a 10 RPM motor. And I'm using to control speed, I'm using, I won't tell you anything, but I'm using a pulse width modulation module that's readily available on Amazon. It's one of these guys. You have your forward or reverse control. You'll just find whatever makes it forward, because you can wire the DC motor either way, and you'll leave it there. And then you put your hot wires in on the right. I forget which is which. Probably says on the bottom power plus and power negative, right there and there. And then the far 2 left ones, they go to the motor. And these are pretty efficient. This does not get warm with use. I'm using a 500 milliamp power supply with that motor, which is way ample as far as power goes. And it's working just fine. This does not get warm at all. You could use like a laptop power supply, even if it's like 18 volts. The only thing you have to worry about is when you use your on and off switch, and I think this thing works as a on and off switch too, but when you're using your on and off switch, like if you have an 18 volt power supply, you don't want to turn this thing to full on and be spinning your motor faster than its rated speed. Like if we ran that motor up there at 20 or at 60 RPM rather than 30 its max with 12 volt DC nominal, you would no doubt burn it out, and so on and so forth. $13, $14 delivered with Amazon Prime, so it's the motor is plenty affordable, and these I think are $8 or $9 a piece delivered with Prime. In fact, these took 2 days to get here, which is I think what Prime does. So pretty fast and responsive. The motor design layout for mount is an off-centered mount. You can see that with that. The only reason that it's an off-centered mount and not a centered mount, there's for the designs for this on Thingiverse, you search for bullet feeder. The only reason it's not centered, because he has centered this, and then one of the worm drive layouts is, I happen to have this drive at the house that I was going to use for another project, and I'll probably try this one with 223 just to see if it works. So I happen to have this motor, and it had the off-center layout. I don't know if there's an advantage to an off-center motor versus a center one, or if it's just so you can get the motors close to the edge of whatever you're working on. Not sure why. I'm sure there's some advantage to it. So let's see. So we got the bullet feeder at the bottom, a switch mechanism which uses a commonly available switch. The plans that are on Thingiverse for that switch, it's an obsolete part that they recommend on Thingiverse, the author recommended on Thingiverse. He probably just had it available in his local area, and so good luck trying to find that. Probably the next thing you'd want to know is about the mounting mechanism. Let's see if I can get a little bit better angle on the mounting mechanism. Sorry for all the movement. YouTube's editor isn't working right now, so even if I wanted to edit this video, I would not be able to. They're going to a newer one apparently. See if I can find any spare parts. I had some extra parts for that. So what you're seeing there on the bottom is a pipe hanger, and that pipe hanger that's 1-inch trade size. And it's important to remind you that it's trade size because it's assuming that the pipe that it's going to hang is going to have a 1-inch inside diameter. And there is a smaller one. I think there's a 3/4 inch trade size. I didn't buy one. You could try that, but it didn't quite fit the 1-inch tube that's on the Dillon press that supports the case feeder. The blue thing's the case feeder on a Dillon. So I had this available, so why not use that as a mounting point? And so that's a pipe hanger, and so I had to print, 3D print. Zoom out again so you can see it. Just a bushing. This is for actually the motor, but it's the same story on the motor. So we got a 1-inch pipe hanger there, and pipe hangers hang off a 3/8 inch excuse me, 3/8 inch all thread. It was originally mounted 45 degrees or just straight up off of that, a 6-inch piece of 3/8 inch all thread going to an 1.25 inch pipe hanger, and again that's trade size. The motor on this is 1.450 inches in diameter, so I had to put a rather large, actually something like this over the motor, and then with that pipe hanger to get the 1.25 inch assembly to fit. So now for the particular bullets I'm loading with this right now, they're 9mm 124 grain. And so gravity on this thing is your friend and your enemy, and you may have to tilt yours, etc. Depending on whether it's hollow point or not, you may have to find an angle that works best for you, and that's probably something that the commercial product by Mr. Bullet Feeder compensates for. Is it's probably able to do all kinds of adjustments, whereas for me I have to bend stuff, etc. But I may find one happy medium. I just haven't played with it enough. So what I ended up doing is with 124 grain, it turned out that the bullet weight and the nose style that I'm using, which is Barry's bullets, would on some occasions tip back and fall incorrectly into the bullet, I don't know, bullet plate, whatever you want to call it, something like this. This is for 223, but it would just tip back, and so I found that if I lean the thing forward just 10 degrees, which is what I did, it would drop them in the correct way and solve that problem. So I took it out, put it in the vise, bent it, put it back on, and it works for this caliber. But the point is that when you're loading something else, 40 caliber, etc., you may find that you have to change your angles a little bit. You know, and those pipe hangers that I used, 2 pipe hangers on this, I think they were both certainly under $250. I think they were both under $1 each. So, and I was going to get them both the copper color, but they only had copper on one side, so one may be more prone to corrosion, I'm not sure, but that's not really a problem in the part of the country where I'm at. So anyhow, so that's the mounting solution that I use. You can also print clamps that you can run a script Yeah, it's getting a little involved, but anyway, you can print clamps with the correct hole size from things on Thingiverse, and try that too. But PLA is kind of brittle, and it'll surprise you. You can have a part that you think is fairly strong. Yeah, zoom out again. Part that you think is fairly strong, and I don't know if you can see the little gap there, but you just put a little bit of weight, and that gap broke. There's an easy way to fix it. You can use Weld-on, which is a plastic. It's a chemical that softens the plastic temporarily, so you would touch it on that seam. I tried some Loctite on. Yeah, Loctite on it. It didn't work out. But anyway, put a little bit on the seam. It'll wick in, and then it gets soft, and it's not a glue. It just softens the plastic. It's also a carcinogen, so you don't want to be doing a whole lot of that in the indoors. You can also use ether will work too for PLA, which is PLA. Seems tough enough. So this is the basic bullet feeder that I built. Now I'll take the camera and I'll see if I can't. That's gonna get wiggly on you. Sorry. All right. So make sure I'm zoomed out. Okay. So the inside of this thing. Turn it on, something like that. That thing, I don't think it helps at all with 9mm, and I don't have a spring on it right now. In fact, normally what I do is take the 147 grain bullet. That makes it a little bit stronger, but I don't think it makes a difference on this. But remember, you might be loading rifle caliber bullets, which are much higher, and you might be stacking plates so that the plate's higher relative to the bullet. So you'll make plates that don't have these ridges. This plate is actually 60% infill, which I think is probably fine, but it could blow out on the drive mechanism here. We'll have to give it time and find out, because it's not a big deal. 12 hours, you can make one out of 100% PLA infill, and I'm sure that'll be tough enough. I had to make this little wing thing here, and I changed the profile of this little capper thing, because sometimes bullets could fall into the void here. Put my fingers into that void behind that wall, and it would eventually jam things up. So anyhow, let's go ahead and we'll stick some. See if it's working. Down here, all right side up. The way I generally dump bullets out of this thing, I need two hands, so that kind of sucks. I'll probably make a mess. Let's find out. All right side up. They've been running right side up, so this was just a solution to get rid of the very last few failures. And again, this thing was like 10 degrees back, and so what could happen is if a bullet was upside down, I don't know if I can get it, but if a bullet was with the nose down, instead of falling like that, which is what you want, it would just stand enough where it wouldn't fall at all, and it would just stay in there and miss the chute. So try dropping a few more cases. Oops, dumping them. I missed it on the camera, sorry. Try it up here. I haven't actually ran it yet. Like if you have, I ran it, but I mean as far as reloading, because my dies aren't set up correct yet for this or for a different weight. So I mean, you might find out, for example, when you're running it and you got it set right, that because the whole thing is moving a little bit, this thing's pretty solidly mounted, but on some people's benches that they wiggle a lot. And so you may discover that that you need to even lean it forward a little bit more. So right now this is at about 35 degrees, the bottom of this thing, 35 degrees tilt. You may find that you need to bring it even forward a little more. It just depends. A lot of times you have to run it while you're wiggling stuff and be standing on the step stool to see what's really going on. But it certainly looks promising. It looks like it's going to work fine. I'm going to do this with 223, and then I'm going to make another bullet collator bullet dropper for the larger. You have to get a new one, but the larger one of these. This is the not the largest, but it's the next largest one. This would be good for 45 ACP, 40 caliber. 40 cal will not drop through this one. So 40 cal, 45 ACP, and then the big size one is not really useful for anything, but if you did 50 caliber, and that's, you're not going to do that on this press. So anyhow, hopefully this gives you some ideas of what's possible. You can see that I made this drop so you can actually scale it in the 3D design if you get into that at all. And I've got less than 20 hours of experience. I've used CAD very rarely for 10 or 20 hours, 4 or 5 times in the last 30 years. So, and this program I'm using for designing this, I use FreeCAD. I've probably got 20 hours under my belt, and I designed, you know, this guy, the housing for the switch, this drop, and the way it's set up is you can edit parameters and it'll just automatically make it for you. So so if you're even a little bit computer savvy, you can do this too. And the nice thing about 3D and how it's great for a hobbyist is, you know, like say you wanted to build, like there's one design on Thingiverse where a guy has this and you put a hinge into it, so this activates the priming mechanism. It sends another primer to where it can be stuck into a bullet. Well, in his design, he just uses a little hinge to bring it back. No 3D printer. This would take you forever to carve this out of plastic. 3D printer, this is absolutely a trivial task. And so it's the same with this stuff. It's really easy to do. And if it works for me, it's going to work for you. And of course with the mounts, you could twist them one way or the other, whatever works for you. I mean, you just have to find that sweet spot. And so this thing is something that you can do. It's a great hobby thing, and you could do this, including the cost of the printer, for less than what you'd have to buy a bullet hopper from Double Alpha. But the Double Alpha bullet, you know, dropper thing is a rock solid product. Works fantastic. People love it. Serious shooters use it. So this is kind of, if you don't mind putting a little sweat equity into it, you can make something that works. And like on the Double Alpha thing, these parts snap together. Mine are, you know, this thing's designed for specifically this size of tubing, plugs into this. You know, theirs is a total product solution. You know, if you got more money than time kind of thing, or if you're not into doing the hobby thing. So anyway, this is what you can do. Pretty straightforward. It looks like it can work. I don't think I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube where people are they show these running and dropping some bullets, but I haven't seen anyone run they're 3D printed ones anyway, such where, wow, that thing could really work. You know, I mean, it's just showing them dropping bullets with the nose up, but and I understand there's modifications for making this nose down. I think people use that for lubricating some of their cast bullets. I'm not sure, but I usually use some copper plated, so I'm not interested in that right now anyway, but it's something you could do. So anyhow, Mr. Bullet Feeder feed die. It's an excellent die, super simple to lock in, and it's a little bit adjustable on the inside of it too, where you place the bearings for dropping the bullets. Really inexpensive switch from eBay, but not, I mean from, in this case it's Amazon, but on this one I had to tweak it. I had to take the switch apart to make it work really well, whereas that other tube assembly I was showing you earlier in the video, I just happened to luck out and one of the switches worked fine in that particular housing. So, but I don't think it'll work with 223. This one might, because I loosened the spring pressure on the inside, which probably decreases the reliability of the switch. So I'm going to try to do something different. Just trying to think if there's anything else. Regular 5mm jack. One of the nice things about the pulse width modulation motor is it's very forgiving. Again, like I mentioned before, you can use higher voltage power supplies with this, like an 18 volt or 16 volt DC laptop power supply, for example, but you'd want to be careful that you don't spin the motor too fast, or you'll just eat its gears up. And time will tell if these things have a transmission that's strong enough for long-term use, because I know the double alpha is using worm drive transmission, which is, you know, like maybe that wide and maybe that long. So that wide, that long, and about that thick, versus, you know, this thing's probably 20% the volume, but who knows, maybe they're using real good materials, and then you just never know on eBay. And these motors that kind of have a part number, but it might be a part number just generated for Amazon. So I hope folks got something from this, just some food for thought. And again, all this switch is doing, it's just cutting. I wired this switch so that it's in front of the controller, so when this switch is in this position where the bullet is stopping the switch from actuating, this thing's getting no power at all. It can't provide power to the motor. And it is possible for this thing to be sitting at the wrong height for the ogive, so that the motor would keep dropping even though there's bullets there, because where this lever, and you know, that's part of the thing with the double alpha, they're using a long lever that drops down and swings out and actually comes out of their assembly, and they're using a clear tube. I just cut this thing out so that you could see into it. I think this is a good idea too, but I'm biased, baby. But anyhow, their switch will work with, you know, any caliber. So, you know, theirs is just a little bit more refined. This one you will have to do a little bit of tweaking. You want to buy the 10-pack of these, because you may have to screw up a couple of them before you are able to get one to work. They're not just plug and play, not at all. So here's my design. It seems to work. I'm going to load about 2,500 124 grain bullets. I'll do a test run of, I already worked up a little bit, I'll do a test run of 100 of them and take them out and make sure that everything's totally kosher. I'm going to use BE86, which is the newer bullseye, newer than Power Pistol. It's the current generation of bullseye, and pretty stout loading. Anyhow, thanks once again. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy. Remember, this is hobby for me, so if you're not, this isn't your thing, don't watch it. Talk to you later. Bye.